Okay. I would like to acknowledge that this meeting is being held on the traditional lands of the Osage, Shawnee, Miami, Adena, and Hopewell people, and pay my respects to elders both past and present.
So that's something that we started doing as a staff this year after coming back from a conference in New Mexico where there are many indigenous and American Indian tribal populations, and it's a start. What we're trying to lean into is seeing if there are any of those tribal people that still live in this community, because it's best for them to give kind of acknowledgement when we start some kind of event or activity. So that's why we're doing that. So, welcome. So I'm Barbara Burke-Fondren, and I'm here with some of my coworkers to give you the state of the school, to let you know like how we're doing, what we're doing, a time for us to be open and transparent about things that you're excited about, things we're not so excited about, and et cetera. And this is also a time for you to ask questions. You know, we're here as stewards of the community, and we serve you. So if there's something that comes up you want to know more about, please feel free to ask. And of course, this is all on tape, so we can come back and understand what exactly you said at any time and point in history. I'm kidding. No, we'd love to hear any of your thoughts or comments. So thanks for coming and spending some of your evening with us. So I'd like to, every time we gather together, share what staff are here so you can get to know them. So Tracy, do you want to start?
Yes, I'm Tracy Yates, and I am a teen advisor in the Woods and Sycamore Studio.
Thank you. Becky?
I'm Becky Wilson. I'm the lead educator at the nursery, our 0 to 3 program with Fun Health. I'm Kelly Coots, Administrative Services and Finance. I'm Melissa Cole, taking Kelly's place.
Kelly's not leaving, she's still here.
I'm Melissa Wiesinger, I'm the Expansion Development Coordinator.
I'm Caitlin, I'm the Teen Transition Coordinator.
I am Danielle Manzo, and I'm the Teen Studio Support Coordinator.
Okay. And so we don't have any of our board members here tonight, but they're here in spirit and love. And so if you want to know more about them, they're all on our website if you go to About Us. And so they meet 10 months of the year right now, every other Tuesday. So their meeting will be next Tuesday. And it takes place in the Summit. It's an open meeting, and it's at 6 o'clock. So, and then families by level. So what early ed families do we have? Okay. All right, great. And 6 to 9. All right, 9 to 12. 12 to 14. And 14 to 18. There we go. All programs, alumni. Yeah, some of us are in that category too. And so tonight we have Sasha here for the PIP Council just to talk a little bit about them, and there's some slides, and go for it.
Oh, no, me to do my slide thing now.
What'd you say?
Do you want me to do this?
You're coming up next. There you go.
Okay, there we go.
Do you want to come and get this, or be up there and get this, or? Well, you need to come over here so they're in the camera. Sorry.
No somersaults.
No somersaults.
No somersaults. All right, thank you. All right, so we have for the PIP Council a couple of things coming up important. Oh, perfect. There they go. All right. So the first thing is our 10-hour family commitment. Every family for Montessori has committed to do 10 hours of volunteer time in the school, in your studio. We're volunteering at PIP events. There's a couple coming up that you can do. Of course, always a spring celebration. Book fair is a big one. This is our BOGO book fair, so this is a good one coming up, right?
Buy one, get one. Not everyone knows that.
Oh, BOGO?
I don't know. Does everybody know that? You know that.
I don't know.
Maybe it's just me that doesn't understand.
And of course, staff appreciation is coming up next week. It's our short week with PPCs. So we've got a couple things: a breakfast for the staff, lunch for the staff, office supplies, and some special massages and stuff that we've got some stress relief for them coming next week. As always, we do the Kroger signups, Amazon Smile. You can go on your Amazon account and sign Community Montessori up. And box tops are now online, so there's an app. So we can also do all that. All right.
Great. So Melissa Cole, who used to be the chair until we hired her away from PIP, and so I think Katie Receiver, right, is taking on that role, who was here earlier tonight doing some of the food. Oh man, okay. So anyway, we really appreciate all that PIP does to help us to help you get connected to the school. So terrific. So, I like to just think every year about what are some things that maybe you want to know about that you don't know about. And so one of the big things we added a year ago was a coaching workshop. So the National Center for Montessori in the Public Sector is a group that we work with and collaborate with. And, so we work really hard to have a very collaborative culture. And so I see my role, just like the teacher's role is to serve the children and the families, I see my role as serving the teachers and giving them supports and things that they need. And so we have a very progressive model of professionalism, so where we use a lot of trust with each other and a lot of open dialogue, and every one of us can question any one of us at any time. And so we also put together this more formal coaching process, which the staff meet with different staff members to make goals and plans, and these coaches help them to meet what goals they want to set and help to give them resources and so forth to do that. So that's been a really big shift in our professional structure and culture over the last year and a half. Montessori credentialing, we have such a committed staff of teachers. Danielle and a group of teen staff just completed our 6 staff members that went through the teen Montessori credentialing. We have staff at every studio in the elementary and early ed level, and most of the studios have 2 credentialed teachers, which is really unheard of in the culture of a Montessori environment. Oftentimes, if you have one teacher that's gone through that credentialing, and that credentialing can look like anything like what Danielle went through, which was 30 months. 22 to 30 months for some, where it's a blend of online learning and resources and workshops and assignments, as well as a residential portion. And then we have some staff that go for 6, 7, 8 weeks in the summer for 3 summers in a row, and have assignments and things they do on top of that. And so we have 2 or 3 staff members that did this past summer, and it's a really big commitment for residential, so, and all the things in between. So as a school, we let teachers figure out when it's the right time for them and where they want to go, and the school can also support that training program. So oftentimes we pay for the full tuition of the program as well. So we really have had a goal. About 6 years ago, we surveyed the staff about what our priorities are. One of them was to increase teacher salaries. And so because we have a co-teacher model, it will never be like it is in a traditional public school setting, but we're getting closer all the time. And so overall, the staff that have been here in the last 7 years have seen a 35% increase in their teacher salary. So we're really excited about that. Teaching with fidelity is a phrase that we use a lot in the Montessori environment to try to support. I think teaching with fidelity works in every environment, not just a Montessori environment, but for Montessorians, we're trained to be reflective. And if something's working or it's not working, we change it. We don't just, it's just not in our wheelhouse to just go through the motions. And so when I first got my educator's license, and I was in a lot of public schools and private schools for a while, sometimes that's the culture. And so in our culture, it's always about, if we're not seeing a change in whether it's behavior or intellect or academics, et cetera, then we reflect, we observe, and then we change and we adjust it. So one example of that is there was a dyslexia law that was passed in the state legislature. It went into effect July 1 of this year. And so last year we had a staff member go through a deep training in dyslexia specifically and help to compare that to the Montessori philosophy. And a lot of what we learned is if we do Montessori with fidelity, meaning consistently and add things to it, observe and change instruction, that is the number one foundational piece of supporting children with reading goals. And then, on top of that, we did some very specific things that we added to our process, like we use a program called Roxy Reading that supplements what's happening in the Montessori environment, which just helps us to break down even smaller what we're doing with a specific child. And then the whole process, we've always had a very personalized teens program. As we shared last year at this meeting and in other workshops, the state has finally noticed that, yes, it's a good thing for all high schools to do. And so they've allowed us to do some things that we wanted to do for a really long time, and further let teens really craft their environment. And even there's talk that, so right now there's the regular diploma is called the Core 40 diploma, which is 40 credits they need to complete in order to graduate. Well, when you have 40 credits, it's really hard to personalize, the learning. So that ends up being just a few of those courses can be personalized. And so one of the goals from the State Board of Education is to move to a Core 25 or something like that. So there's less courses then that are mandatory from the state and more choices that teens can make. So we are primed and ready to go when they make that next step too. But for now, we'll follow, the rules, I guess. We don't do that a lot, but we'll do that for the diploma thing. And so, we'll keep working to personalize. So the teen staff, Caitlin and Danielle, and Hannigan's not with them tonight. We'll talk to you more about that later. Thanks, Caitlin. So we're in year 3 of a 5-year charter with Ball State. I keep asking them and lobbying for an evergreen charter, which means that we'll just keep adding 5 years each time. We're not there yet, but I'm hopeful. I think surely they're going to get tired of us doing all this paperwork every 5 years. But anyway, for now, we're in year 3, so we'll start the process of that in a year and a half with Ball State. And what I heard recently from the Office of Charter Schools is they'll let us do more personalizing of that, which is super exciting. And so this last year, we did utilized a group called Advanced Education, which is a national education. So we had to kind of follow their model when we did the renewal before, but they're saying that we can do our own way of doing that. So we're super excited about that. The 2021 lottery for next school year happens next Monday. And so our waiting list is still very high, over 100. We'll have a few spots that we'll have openings for. And so humbling, hard, but yet a good problem to have financially. So we'll talk more about that. Courage Cabin's in full throttle, and so we're super excited that so many teens are being able to get services for mental health on our campus now. And so we're continuing to add to the resources up there. Right now we have one therapist. We're trying to add additional ones. It's really hard. If you know great therapists that might want to work on our campus for a couple of days a week, let us know. We'd love to get them set up as well. Every level, so 3 to 6 year old staff, 6 to 9 year old, 9 to 12, 12, 14, 14, 18, sets goals every year. So we look at the end of each year, we reflect and we have 3 in-service days at the end of the year and 5 in-service days at the beginning of the year. So we reflect and assess those goals, and we reset goals for the next year. And so we're, we want things to be authentic and real, and so we work really hard at that part as well. And then just that, we listened to families that said, gosh, that enrollment's really hard to come on a Friday night or a Saturday. So we worked over the last few years to create this online enrollment. And so this will be our 3rd year doing it. Excuse me, and keep finding ways to make that easier for families. So we're moving to a family form for more of the paperwork this year. So that process will start on the 12th. You'll get an email on February 12th about enrollment, and then those forms will go out on February 13th. And so you can do it from your own home. And we really encourage, and you'll be getting more information about this, to have your learners fill it out with you. Have them do it, and you look at it before they press next. And, when my children were very young, 6, 7 years old, they started doing all of their own paperwork at the doctor's office or when we went somewhere to look at something. And so in the spirit of independence and empowerment, we hope that you'll do that too with your children.
So you won't get questions when they go through the allergies and they go, drugs? I don't do any drugs.
What a great opportunity, right? No, you do not, and you never will. Yeah, so there it is, online enrollment coming soon. These are just some enrollment reminders, and this slideshow will be up on Inform Montessori blog with this video, so you'll be able to get to these things, and you could just kind of whip through that. And so it just tells you, and this will be coming in the email, when those due dates are going to be. And then, we really, when we started as a charter school, actually when we converted to a charter school from a private school, we started a survey with families, and we used to have like 3 surveys. We had one that Ball State gave you, and then we had one that we gave you, and then we have one that PIP gave you. And so we've streamlined that all into one survey now. But we, of course, what we like best is when families talk directly to the people they need to talk to. If that's a teacher, if that's me, if that's Melissa, whoever that is. You don't even know which Melissa I'm talking about. So we work really hard to, give you ways to communicate. But we also like that summative information too. And so it gives us good, gauge of how things are going. And so this was some of the summative information from last year. We, a lot of times people give good comments as well. So 92% of the families feel that teachers have built a partnership with their family in shaping their education. 97% said they felt comfortable going directly to the teacher. That warms my heart, to think that staff feel that comfortable. 97% feel comfortable with going to a teacher. And, although we still break down some of those barriers, some of us didn't have great school experiences when we were young, or our parents didn't have great trust in that process. And so to have that, that many people feel comfortable with just saying like, okay, I'm not trying to make you upset. Like, no, we want to hear it. We really do. We want to hear if you have questions or concerns or thoughts, because that helps us all partner better. Any questions about any of that? Because see, I could talk all day. I know it doesn't sound like it, but I can. But interrupt me at any time if you have questions, thoughts, worries, anything with any of that so far. I know I'm not to the numbers and all that yet, but still. So you saw this email that went out today, and a lot of things we're going to talk about today, some of which we're passionate about, some of which we have to do and we're not so passionate about. But we stay committed to you that our number one focus is on each individual human. And so we think that is the best assessment of what we do. The story of Zoe came out in an email to you today, and it just reminds us of, how fragile life is, and, what our role is in that process as educators, to support each individual, whether they are transgender that's transitioning from male to female, or whether they're a young person that's still trying to figure out how to read. And so we look at each human as their own person, and don't say all of our first graders blah blah blah, all of our 9th levels blah blah blah. Instead we look at them as the human first. Even though we focus on each human, we will share the other parts of who we are as well in this relationship with families. So one part of that is the state accountability piece. And if you've been to these meetings before, you know that is like a moving target. And, there's the federal accountability piece, and then there's the state accountability piece. And so if you think about when all of this kind of started was in the No Child Left Behind era, and now it's every child succeeds part, and then it's continuing to change. But there are certain parameters that are put on us as a school for the federal accountability that we abide by as a charter school, and others that we don't need to do. And then there's the state accountability part. And so how we are a charter school is through our authorizer, Ball State, a charter contract that we have with them. And so one of those things is that we, set goals with them on this 5-year rotating basis. Some of those are academic, some of those are financial, and so we'll be talking about some of those as we go through. This information's embargoed, but I'm sharing it with you anyway because it's, it's going to be like next school year before we have this information, and I don't know why it really matters, so there it is. But, it kind of shares with you that, it's kind of like when you go to a kitchen and you know, restaurant, and you see that that restaurant is an A, a B, or C, you know, some of that's pretty black and white, right? It's widgets, you know, it's like, were there roaches or were there not, right? And so that makes sense. When you do that to a school, I think it is super complicated. I can't even tell you, you know, all of the ways that the percentages are affected, but I'm going to do my best today to give you some of that information. But what we have been for the last few years is a B or a C school. This year we were a C school. As you may know, the passing rate for the new test that was given last year, I Learn, was 37% of the state, of the children of the state passed the test. And you know, there's an outcry from the legislators, why are we giving a test that 37% are passing? And what is the purpose of that, and what are we learning from it? And you know, our staff feels similar. So you know, what we stay committed to is that we teach children, we don't teach to test. And so you know, if we were a school that is making great grades on these tests, we probably won't be who we are anymore. So we try to find the right balance of that. You know, both of my children who graduated from the school, both of them went on, they got merit scholarships. Like, anyone that wants to do those things can still do those things. They were very different individuals, but that's not what we're going to do from the time that they start getting tested here, is to try to get them to get a good score on a test. So often we miss points because of our small class size, and so you'll see some of that from some of the slides that I'll give you. And so our state accountability score is expected. It's again still embargoed right now. If they hold harmless last year, the I Learn, then will be a B again. But what it would be if they didn't hold us harmless because of the 37% pass rate, it would be a C. The federal accountability score, which they went from letter grades to words, and so now based on that same thing, it's approaching expectation based on that 37% pass rate. And so these just tell you some of the things that we do. And so we have 8 constructs we work with children, from physical to wellness to aesthetics, and school success is one of them. And so school success means those things that we teach, and I often give this example. This has been several years ago, but there was a test question that said, how many ladybugs can fit on this blade of grass? And so, you know, they wanted the children to get the ruler out, the little paper ruler they gave them, measure the piece of grass, measure and so, you know, sometimes our children, and one that I spoke to specifically, they're like, I don't know what to do with this question. I'm like, well, what do you mean? What, you know, well, because what if it's a mama and her babies? What if they go up both sides of the blade of grass? So, you know, and so school success means that sometimes we have a conversation like, so in this case, we turn off the creativity construct and we just give somebody what they want to hear. And so we try to do that enough that doesn't stop kids from just answering safely to just be done with something, because we believe the creativity construct is more important than this school success construct. But that's what we do as a staff, is we look at these things and we think, what are the things that we need to give them support with, knowing at the teens level, it's ACT and SAT kinds of things. And even in their college classes, it says, okay, I get it, you're upset at this professor because of A, B, and C, but is this the thing you want to go to the mat for? You know, or do you want to let it go, you know? And so, you know, and down in the elementary and so forth, trying to get them to say, okay, so I get it that this table's confusing, but think about before how you've practiced using tables and what's similar and what's different than this, you know? And so, and for most of us, we would look at that and put on a filter of our own logic, and that may or may not work for this particular setting. What was the thing that just came out? You know, there was an algebraic equation that went viral, and everyone was trying to figure out how to solve it. Did anyone see that? Yeah. And it was a bogus question, it ended up being, but all these intelligent people had, you know, 4 or 5 different ways they'd solve this problem. And so we work on that. We think that's what's most important, is kids figuring out all the different ways instead of just trying to answer it one right way. We do individualized assessments, interventions. So, teachers look at all of these different, the NWA assessments, the iLearn assessments, individual assessments, observations, and they put in individual interventions in place for young people. And then, one of the things our staff does is at the end of the year, as they're pulling all of this information, pulling it all from the different ways that they support learning, that's part of how they get some of their increase in their base pay is based on the school success model. So they've created a differentiated salary structure. Some of it's based on attendance, some of it's based on I-STEP scores and NWA scores, but only as a, either or, so they can show multiple ways that a child learns instead of just one. So I'll just kind of go through these. So the far left is the 2019, so it just kind of shows you, and so one way to look at this, you say, oh, our iRead tests have been lower. And so, we have about 40 children in the third level. So that difference between 76 and 85 is 2 children. And so, on a given year, that will happen. And so sometimes it's, that child's grown a lot, but that's just not where they are at this point. So that's, about 80, 2 children with the 85 to 76 percentage. There's some of the iLearn at all levels, so the math and the language. So this current year, the light blue is the first year for iLearn. NWA, which you'll see in a minute, is also based on the new iLearn test items. Yep. And so there's the NWA, there's the proficient and growth, and so, reading and language, our kiddos score higher on because they're more similar to the test questions than our math concrete materials. So those flip-flops, the proficient's on the other side there. Sorry about that. And so what we do as a staff is we look at multiple ways of learning. So if you look at, the reading has to do with NWA and iLearn, and the language has to do with NWA or iLearn. And so were they proficient or show growth in one of those areas? Any questions about any of that? You got it. Click, check. So just our commitment to you will continue to support lifelong joyful learning. And that doesn't mean joyful learning doesn't have struggles. We most certainly are okay with struggle. And when a young person, is learning something new, we want to help them to build that resilient skill as well. From birth to graduation, we're working on the most difficult learning aspects, which is knowing ourselves, and too much focus on academics, so it's a balance of that for us. We want to continue that part. And transition adulthood being the most important. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Danielle and Caitlin to share with you a little bit more about our transitions to adulthood.
Yay. Oh man, okay. I gotta tell you, working in the teens program is typically a very exciting time because when your child gets to adolescence, they have entered into a new blossom of creativity and development. They have a whole new capacity to learn new and different things as kind of their brain space firms up and some of that gray matter starts to make space for new information. So it's been interesting over the last 12 years to watch multiple sets of kids complete that process from the time they enter the islands at the age of 12 all the way to graduation at the age of 18, and in some cases talking to our graduates who are out in the world now working. There's a few downtown working to work on a call-out meeting for Southern Indiana Pride, and so they're texting me, telling me how that's going. So we're pretty much committed for life in the Teens program to helping them transition to adulthood. Up here on the slide, you can see these are the things that we are looking at as a teen staff when it comes to empowerment and valorization, making sure they're actually doing the work of adulthood, starting that while they're here, and practicing tools for self-advocacy. How do you say what you actually need to not just your peers, but to other adults, and also practicing independence and leadership. I cannot put into words how much growth happens from the age of 12 to 18. And that might seem really obvious, but their personality, it stays pretty congruent the whole entire time, but their interests change, and they start to find more details in what they're doing. And as we open up more opportunities for them, they're able to discover so much more. So that personalized learning process kind of really blossoms at this stage. So these are a few things that we're helping them do to prepare for their future. We talked a little bit last year about career concentrators, which is one of the things that the state has put into place for us that we get to offer more personalized learning with. It's kind of like choosing a mini major, like what you would do in college, but instead in high school. And there's a variety of ways this can happen. That we have kids who are looking at computer science, we have kids who are working in health sciences, we have kids who are working in visual communications. We have kids who are working in health and human services. So they start with classes here on campus, and they start to blossom out into the community in a couple different ways. One of the ways we track this is through life folders. And so all of the advisors in the Woods program specifically have access, well, the Woods and the Islands now, have access to life folders where we kind of track their career interests as they are moving up through the levels, so that their career interests post-graduation are something we are helping to tailor their education to the whole time. These often change. I know there have been a couple kids who have started to look at being a lawyer, and they go and they start this program and they take their first class on criminal justice and they go, yeah, that's not at all what I want. I think what I actually want is to be a social worker. And we're like, oh, okay, well that's similar and yet not. So we kind of turn on a dime and help them go in that direction. So it's exciting to watch that transition from thing to thing. Because we have 2 teen advisors in every studio, we have the opportunity to meet with them quite frequently and keep these conversations up. In the Woods level, we meet with them on a weekly basis to make sure we are sticking to that individualized education plan. And keeping them consistent. This is where that self-advocacy moment comes in, because oftentimes they need to have a hard conversation here and there, and we help them to have that. Let's see, we have all kinds we have afternoon seminars, directed studies are a part of that, all kinds of opportunities for them to kind of move in different directions for their learning. This year we had a teen who actually for their capstone wanted to lead a Shakespeare and dramatic literature seminar, and so they learned about Shakespeare, earned an English credit, and also got a special topics and theater credit because they actually acted out the Shakespeare as they were learning it, which helped them interpret that a little bit more clearly. So that's super exciting to see. We also have a lot more off-campus opportunities now. In previous years, we've always had internships. Starting at the age of 16, our teens going off campus into the community to actually work. So that our teens have a resume with at least 4 different job experiences on it by the time they graduate high school, which is kind of phenomenal. But now, oh yeah, it's amazing. But now they can also go off campus to college campuses to take dual credit courses and start that part of their life. And not just dual credit courses to help them apply to college, but dual credit courses that help them go into trade industries. So one of our partners is Ivy Tech, and they have a big HVAC program. And we have a lot of teens who are heading in that direction and getting a taste of that career field before they leave here. And our teens could go to any of our local universities. We try to help them work that out.
About 82% or something, I think, go on to four-year colleges.
Yes, on average from year to year. And this year we actually started something new called Senior Seminar. We're really unique in that our seniors get to plan their graduation every single year. We don't have school colors, but really our seniors seem to think they change from year to year because they choose what colors their gowns are going to be. They choose the music that they're walking down the aisle to. I haven't heard Pomp and Circumstance in a long, long time at graduation. It is usually one thing or another. They're still debating on that this year. Yeah, Star Wars happened. Darth Vader came down the aisle one year. It was great. But Senior Seminar is now taking that idea of just planning for graduation and making it a capstone course where they're actually wrapping up and planning for life. So we're trying to give them a little bit more financial information, like, hey, taxes are a thing that you might have to do, like now, for your hourly job. And also getting them out in the community and networking further and learning how to actually use the network they've built upon. One way we start this, getting out in the community and learning how to function in a career field, is through Occupations and Creativity, Inc. These two programs kind of feed into one another. The Island staff and the Wood staff has spent quite a bit of time this year working together to make sure the Woods is listening to the Islands and their success with occupations, and the Islands is hearing what the Woods are going to be doing. So,
The Islands is 12 to 14-year-olds.
Yes, sorry.
The Woods is 14 to 18.
Yeah. And so the 12 to 14-year-olds in the Islands doing occupations are focused in these four areas up here. The Woods doing Creativity, Inc., more specifically in the four areas down there. Occupations, they go to work every Wednesday. So instead of going straight to lessons, they have interview for a job in one of these four areas and are expected to show up to work ready to go. In Creativity, Inc., it's more of a gig economy sort of situation because we have many things that they have to do when they earn credits, but we also want to make sure we carry on that line of occupations, but also kind of keeping our creative culture alive. So this spring, you'll be able to see our Creativity, Inc. exhibition in action featuring The Sound of Music. So there's our little plug for that.
And so like the Culinary Arts group will be making food.
Yes, yes.
That, you know, so each of those things makes something that contributes to the whole.
Yes. And at very different times. Yeah, so the fall, the Culinary Arts had a huge role in creating a dinner service during our variety show. And so there was actually dinner theater happening in the MAC. And the visual arts prepared all the table settings to make sure that they all went with the theme of the night. And we had a marketplace, and it was great. That was really cool. Yeah, awesome. Thank you. So I mentioned before just a little bit having internships and being able to partner with the community. And also before those internships happening, having foundational courses that help prepare them for that experience. So in their 9th and 10th level year, they have some knowledge to gain. And we have 3 different courses that they take with us that are very direct instruction, very guided by the advisors. And that's adult roles and responsibilities, preparing for college careers, and then what are you thinking? And what are you thinking is a combination of health and wellness and interpersonal relationships. So through this, they start to build on the roles of how to communicate with other people, what to expect when you are going to a job, how to prioritize your time, what to do with your money or lack thereof, what to do with your family if you have one, or what to do with other humans that you have to contend with on a daily basis, like coworkers. All of these things come up so that they've hopefully had some experience with this before they enter into that working world. We've been trying to create a lot of partnerships outside of the school with internships to help make this a stronger program. One of the ones we've worked on this year is with Norton Women's and Children's Hospital. And not just partnering with them in the medical fields, but in the HVAC fields, in the food services fields. It's like a small city over there. So making sure they're in all parts of it. Another way we do this is through ASSIST, and ASSIST is our mental health support group. It is mostly focused in the woods right now, but this year the islands are actually a part of it, and something called Assistance, and our woods learners are leading them in that kind of program and ideal. So they are partnering with the Center for Women and Families, trying to make sure we keep mental health and self-care on the front line. You're next.
So both Barbara and Danielle have mentioned how we try to personalize education, continuing up all the way through the teens program, especially in the woods area. And one way we do this is through dual credits. We have a partnership with Ivy Tech Community College where our students can take dual credits there on their campus, and we also have a couple professors come to our campus for some classes as well. This is a really good opportunity because, of course, a college has a wide range of different classes a learner can take. So if there's anything that sparks their interest that they just want to learn more about, or if they are planning on going to college after they graduate, they can also knock out some general education requirements while they're here that'll transfer over. 90% of our current graduating class has taken dual credit courses, and we already have 77% of our juniors who have taken dual credit courses. So that's been a big jump compared to previous years. This year alone, we had students enroll in 98 different courses through Ivy Tech. And on top of that, many of our teens who are graduating this year have already started receiving acceptance letters to universities, colleges, technical schools, and other institutions as well on top of that.
Now, and they get 50% off of the tuition at Ivy Tech, which is really helpful because the courses they take there can transfer to any Indiana university. And at the same time, some of them go to U of L or Spalding or IUS, and so we help them to put those on their transcript here. But it really is helpful that they can do that and kind of practice college at a 50% off of the tuition.
And with the support of us around to help them through,
You could go talk to your professor.
Yes, you can go talk to your professor.
Office hours.
Let me help you write that email.
And what do the professors say about our teens?
Man, we
yes, we
two
do.
professors through our program. I guess it was last week, and they were the two professors that are teaching our on-campus public speaking course. We have two different groups this year because we had so many learners who wanted to do that. And they had lots of questions as we were coming through. They weren't super aware of how charter schools work or how Montessori schools worked, and so giving them that information was neat. But when we sat down with them at the end, we're like, okay, so how are things going? Are there any concerns, things you're seeing? And they're like, well, actually, we don't have any concerns. They keep turning things in, like they just knew what to do the other day when we said, we're gonna write an outline, and they started and worked with me as we were doing it.
And actively participating in the class too, which you don't find commonly in a traditional school setting.
And they say that. They say, this is strange because I go into this school and another school and all the kids just kind of come in and go to sleep. And they're like, and everybody seems really attentive here. Thank goodness. But this is something that is really consistent from year to year with our dual credit professors coming in and saying, your kids are ready to come in and work hard. And we know that when they have questions, they're going to come ask and kind of make that effort to figure out what the next step is in that process.
I was just going to add too, those two professors you're talking about are brand new to our school.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, absolutely no.
So just always need to hear a new perspective that comes in and is kind of wowed by our younger generation of engagement.
It's awesome.
We had the mayor of New Albany here. Was that last year or the year before?
Last year at graduation.
Well, even like when he came and visited, was that last year or the year before?
It was the
Yeah. And we walked, a group of teens met with him, and, you know, he said, oh, you know, you just chosen the best ones, you know, and I know that you guys are just been chosen as the best ones. And a couple of them, like, got offended, you know, they're like, actually, I'm not the best one. You know, with this and this, and it was just...
One of them said, I'm currently failing chemistry.
It was hilarious. But, you know, like, we let whoever wants to participate in those things participate. We don't, you know, pick the ones that, anyway, it was hilarious. Any questions for anything about the teens and transitioning and...
39-year-olds allowed to be a junior.
I've been trying to enroll for dual credit courses for a while. It's just not working out.
No, it was for like how to interact with your family and
Oh, yeah.
all that stuff.
No,
It's a good time, that course.
Well, the other neat thing, which I don't think y'all mentioned, was extended campus plans, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Teens will, you know, often, if they get ahead of the game, you know, they'll take more time out of school. And so, like, our youngest who went here, her senior year, she was only here like one morning a week. And so she was off at U of L for a course, she was at IUS for a course, she came in, she did some extra work outside of this, she did an extra internship. And so we really encourage teens in their senior year to get out in the world. Like, you know, we want to help you to, you know, and it builds their confidence and then they feel more ready. Because some of the teens will still say to us, college is hard, you know? And so we want to give them as many experiences as they can before they get there to practice that.
And we try to make it as real as possible. That last picture on that last slide, you might notice Colonel Sanders. One of our first acts in the senior seminar this year is we brought them to downtown Louisville. We went to the 21C Museum and talked to the curator there as well as a professor from Spalding about what it is to kind of see adulthood launched around you. We visited the Humana building and talked about what was happening in Humana. We visited the visitor center and what tourism means for Louisville as a city, which they had no idea that was a thing. They also learned a lot about, more than they thought, about the homeless population that lives in downtown Louisville. And so it was one of those things where it became very real for them in that day what being an adult meant. Not all of it, you can't wrap it all up in a bow on 4th Street, but boy was it an experience for them. So it's one of those things as they all came out at the end of the day like, wow, okay, so I guess we have more things to think about, which is what we want to keep having them do, is consider what else there is to learn.
Any questions for these wonderful people? Thank you. All right, Kelly and Melissa.
This is for you.
Money.
Money, 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 money.
All right, just want to welcome Melissa. Like she was introduced earlier, she's been on the PIP Council for several years, so she will be taking my position. I will be moving over to the curb desk to support more over there. So, all right, our enrollment history is based on our ADM, which is the average daily membership, and that count is taken in September. Our funding comes from that for the state. You can see we've stayed pretty steady with a slight increase, especially in the early ed, the red line there. So
The rest of it's full. I won't get any more.
Yeah, we have like over 100 on the wait list.
It all just depends on who's here on that one day, and now it's 2 days. It might go back to 1 day again, but September 13th and February 3rd. Yes, yesterday. Yes.
Yeah, yesterday. All right, our 990 is prepared by the auditors every year in June. You can see these last 2 years, our revenue over expenses have increased. That is our funding from the Charter School Innovation Grant, and we are saving that money to pay for CASA. So, all right, every year we create a budget of our revenues and expenses for the year, and 84% of our budget is coming from the state basic grant. That is based on our ADM every year. So,
early ed's part of that program and material fees too.
Yes, for 14%. All right, the expenditures. Our biggest expense is our salaries at 72%. And then our next largest one is the loan repayment for the building at 10%.
So we talked about our teacher salaries going up before. I think that 10% was more like 20% or 22 if my memory serves. And so then the salaries is within that 59, 60% range. So that's how we've changed that pie over time.
Yeah. All right, so our current loan on the building, we're at $5.2 million. So that has come down considerably since we refinanced in 2016. We do offer...
We have 12 years left to go.
Between 12 and 13,
okay.
Yeah. The cooperative supplemental pay, the CSP, that is a portion of our revenue over expenses at the end of the fiscal year, and the board approves a percentage of that to pay out to staff once a year in October.
So it's kind of like a bonus. And so we put that in place about 6 years ago to try to increase the amount of teacher pay. What's really cool about that is this group of staff, I think there was 20, that got together in that first year to define how are we going to give this money out? If we've got $140,000 that's surplus and there's a percentage of that goes back to the, in this form of CSP, how does it give? And so we had worked up all these different ways, like years of service, percent of salary, and the staff said almost in unison immediately, everyone gets the same amount of money. So whether someone makes $17,000 or $42,000, or they've been here 20 years versus 1 year, everyone gets the same amount. And so this past year it was
2,200.
22? Okay. So it's been as much as 4,000 something. And so our goal of the staff with the goal of increase the teacher pay, because if anyone knows business, exponentially you can't continue that. Like the amount of money we're getting from the state has not gone up 35%, and in some years it has gone down. So our process is to try to keep doing that up to about $1,500 for the CSP, while still being able to pay our teachers the best salary we can.
Okay. Every year we're audited by the State Board of Accounts and Donovan CPAs. So we had a clean audit through June 2019. So we'll have another one this June. We're also responsible to our board of directors, our families, and our financial partners. We make timely payments and have a tight fiscal management.
Always within budget too.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right. Ball State has performance indicators for us. This first one, the working capital ratio, that shows our ability to pay our liabilities. Ball State would like us to be greater than 1.1, and we're at 4.3. So we're really well there. The quick ratio, that shows how well we can meet our short-term liabilities. Ball State wanted it greater than 0.75, we're at 4.21. And unrestricted days cash, that shows how long we can operate without any new income coming in. We can operate for 111 days, almost double of what Ball State wants. And then our debt to asset ratio shows our percentages of assets that are financed, and we've only got 48.37% financed.
And I'm going to talk about Casa de Curiosity. A big.
Y'all seen it? The building that's going back there. You can actually see it from the road when you come in now a little bit.
Yeah. A big thank you goes out to our families, school board, and the state of Indiana for funding construction of Casa de Curiosity. We estimated that the building would cost about $1.4 million to build, and we were able to fund the entire cost of the project. The board of directors designated $500,000 of our cash reserves. We received an innovation grant from the state of Indiana for $947,000, and our community and families contributed $237,520. And in December, Samtech Cares awarded the school with $11,000 grant to support the technology needs for the project. And that is a grand total of almost $1.7 million. I was going to say the whole one, but I gave up.
Any questions about any of the financial information? Oh, come on, give them something.
So
It said the board approved 500,000 in reserve. What's the, tell me what that means.
So like our, what we have in cash at bank.
Okay.
You know, so we've built up money over time, and so when we decided to prioritize the Casa de Curiosity, we earmarked $500,000 for the project from our cash. Yeah.
Is the charter relationship with Ball State recession proof?
Well, you know, what do you mean? Like the money we get from the Department of
That
Ed?
would be affected if there were to be a recession.
You know, so our money comes directly from the State Board of from Indiana Department of Education, the Finance Department. So, you know, I would say yes, because, you know, if you've seen some of the most recent information from the state about the surplus that's there, there is concerns about if there's a recession, what that would look like. So I know that they haven't made the decision this legislative session what to do with that surplus, but some of that process is to, you know, go directly to teacher pay as well as, you know, hold more in the hoppers. They still have additional money set aside for that as well. So recession proof, I don't think any of us are recession proof, but you know, even in 2007-8, when we had that recession, we did not see a drop in our per student amount of money, which is about $6,800. Is that right?
I was thinking 56.
I think total with the special ed and all that, 68, yeah. Yeah. Any other questions, thoughts, comments? Okay, we'll turn to the other Melissa.
Clean audits. That's all we do. No pressure, Melissa.
So yeah, I just wanted to say something about those two grants that she mentioned briefly on the first page, or on the last page. So it's an important distinction. The largest amount came from what they referred to as an innovation grant, which was actually really just additional funding that the state legislature gave to charter schools to try to equalize the difference in funding between charter schools and traditional public schools. There is a gap in funding, which is one of the things that if you guys can help me educate the community to understand that there's still a difference. If your child went to school at Grantline Elementary, they would actually receive a different amount just by being at a different school. Now there's a lot of variables that affect that. It's not the same for all traditional schools either, but it is lower for charter schools. So that grant was kind of intended to be that way. And then it is also linked back to accountability, which is something we're working on too, because other schools don't receive funding based on their accountability scores, but charter schools do. So if we had had an issue with our test scores at some point, we may not have received that money. And there was one other thing I wanted to say about it, but those are two very important things that really, from my point of view, is expansion development and kind of the community awareness piece. The more that people understand this and then understand we're really just a school who wanted to do something different. That's why all of you probably, part of the reason why you might have chosen to send your children here. And we could not do that within the structure of a prescribed curriculum at a traditional school. We're a Montessori school, and that's why we are. We don't really want to be separate from other public schools, but we are treated slightly differently because of that, especially financially. And then
about those numbers, do you want to share what those numbers are?
Yeah, it's about $3,500 less, and the biggest chunk of that is actually related to local property tax revenue. So none of that comes to charter schools. And then also, many of you are familiar with the referendums that have been happening. We cannot issue a referendum for the benefit. We could try to jump onto a referendum if a local school district would agree to that, but obviously that's very complicated. And I was going to say, we actually attempted this, not successfully, but also, you know, overall we could probably, this is an area where we could have opportunity where we could improve to really educate people about why we are asking for that. And why it's important, because these kids that are here are our kids, are the community's kids, just like every other kid. And we don't want to be in an antagonistic relationship. We want to be seen as a partner. And if we have this small need, in this case, I think we were asking for only $250,000 out of the total $1.4 million that we wanted to invest into it. But it was really strong, that people's reaction to it, and it's just, a lot of it is misunderstanding about what it means to be a charter school. Where do the funds go that charter schools have? You know, is it more or less? What does that mean for public schools, traditional public schools? So, yeah.
Right. So the innovation grant is $750 per child.
Yeah.
Versus the capital projects funds, the traditional school is $3,500 a child.
Yeah.
This is related to our test score. This is not related to their test score.
Yeah.
Plus, there's the referendum, which is another $60 million on top of that. You know, so
80
there's
million.
no even playing field here.
So yeah, you may have, did anybody check their mail today and get the flyer from the local New Albany Floyd County Schools? They just sent a flyer out today talking about the results of your tax dollars and all the building projects they did, rebuilt all these schools, which is great and wonderful. They probably really needed those facilities, but that was $80 million. We wanted $250,000 for our small population of kids. So we just need to keep those things in mind. And that links a little bit into some of the things we just kind of talked about, expansion development overall. A lot of people are like, fundraising, which is very important. We want to continue to try to do more of that, and PIP supports that a lot as well with their activities that they do, and they actually contribute some of that money that will go towards the Casa de Curiosity through those activities that you support, like Spring Celebration and Chili Cook-Off and all these things that they do. But we also try to really bring people into the school, and I always welcome suggestions if there's people you think should come in. We do special tours just for people to be more familiar with the school, not as potentially interested parents. We do that weekly, but we set those up, and we had Scott Blair come in to talk about some things that the city is wanting to do with potentially annexing this area and the impact that could have for the school, which would be mostly positive, we think. So we had a meeting with him about that. We met with the chancellor at IU Southeast, one of the vice chancellors, and the dean there about lots of things that we might continue to partner with them on. They have been a pretty strong partner for us, but we found out in that meeting that those leaders still did not understand that we do not charge tuition to come to our school. We're a public school. So even with someone that's as engaged with education as that in our community, and even has been to our school, still didn't really understand that when you enroll your child here, they have a tuition-free education. And then recently we had Roger Jeffers from the Floyd County Parks Department come out, which I guess I'm kind of like showing my cards of the next slide, but we're starting to work on some things for our outdoor environment as like a next big project, potentially, with the staff being on board with that, which we just pulled them about that tonight, so we'll see how that all comes out. We obviously had the groundbreaking for the Casa in October. It took a few more weeks than that to actually really dig in the ground, but it is going up in the air, and we anticipate, go ahead and click to my next. But that was actually before the roof was on. But we think that'll be completed for sure by the end of April, but we're working really hard to move that into mid-April so that we can have the Sound of Music in our new space, which would be amazing. And you won't have like lights on poles, you know, there's gonna be lights in the ceiling, and then there's gonna be sound reduction so you don't hear all the echo. And there's gonna be built-in controls for all that. Storage, bunches and bunches of storage.
Back, the fitness room back.
Yeah, and I mean, that's what we talked about a lot, is all this space, 12 weeks out of the year, our MAC was taken for various things, like totally blocked off almost from any type of physical use, which was its original intent. We didn't want it to be multi-purpose, and this space is multi-purpose as well. It won't only be those things, but at least something that is intended to support those types of activities. And then if you can click back. Yeah. And I just put Red for Ed on there, which actually linked nicely into our conversation. But a lot of people are, I think internally at least, with staff, there was some conflict about how do we respond to this Red for Ed movement that was happening, and like, are we a part of that or are we not a part of that? And when we looked at the 3 priorities for that group, we were like, yeah, we're on board. They were like, increase teacher salaries, figure out I-Learn and how we do testing, and is this important? And there was one more. Can you remember what the one more was? Anyway, there was a third point that we were like, yeah, we agree with that. I think it was just utilize the surplus for education, basically. Which is why I couldn't remember, it wasn't very specific. But anyway, we were like, well, we're a public school too, like, we want to be Red for Ed, but we also just want to put the general Red for Ed on, because we know there's some connotations that come on with that. So we're like, well, we'll just say CM is public education and wear our own red shirts. And so we might try to increase that a little bit, because we kind of had this brainstorm pretty close to the day of their big rally. But again, this is another way that like families can really help support us with just being open about that your child attends a charter school and why you made that choice and why it's important to have that choice, and how we can continue to support that. And just kind of, the tide shifts depending on what's happening politically about whether this is a good thing or a bad thing. And certainly the impacts of negative decisions from other charter schools affect us as well. So how can we talk about how we operate and what we do, and why we want to continue to be here for the community. So, yeah, keep going. Yeah, so we mentioned a little bit, so I won't tell that, but this grant was different. They mentioned Samtech Cares. So another aspect of things that I work on is trying to look for that external funding. This was only their 3rd grant cycle. And so we actually, we asked for $50,000 and received $11,000, which is pretty common that you get maybe not all of what you asked for, but that will all be used for technology that's going to go into that CASA space, sound and lighting and video. So like this presentation tonight, we would have like a screen that comes down and it would already be pre-hooked and we can click through, things like that are just really pretty basic needs that we have not been able to do at our school yet. We're going to be asking you to support that and the expansion fund in general during enrollment. So as you're clicking through your enrollment, you'll at some point see a nice picture of the tech space as it is now and what we hope it will be. So I hope you'll consider doing that. And it will also support, because most of the money, as they explained, for the CASA is already raised, we want to be safe with that and planning for any unanticipated things. But once that's done, we're looking at a master plan for our outdoor space, primarily 6-year-old to 12-year-old space, and then teens outdoor space. So those of you who have teens, do you know where they go what they do when they go outside?
Right. Like out front, I see them all out.
Yeah, they play sometimes football out front, or like they've got little groups that hang out, or like you might have a 14-year-old that's trying to play on the same equipment as like a 10-year-old. And so we just want to expand those opportunities and also make it challenging for those ages, and also potentially create a rite of passage so that you're not on the same thing from potentially when you're 3 until you're 18. You have somewhere that you go that's different after you get to be a certain age, like just things like that it's like what we have is great, and we love that we have the space, the back 4 acres in the woods, and certainly all of our kids love that, and we want to keep that, so we will retain that. But how can we enrich that experience with this plan, and then our staff, and then hopefully all of you will have an opportunity to participate in that as well at our March PIP workshop. We're hoping to get some information to you about that and what that means and what you might like to see out there. Also, we have a bunch of babies this year. Did you guys know we have a bunch of babies here that are coming to our staff? And so the nursery started as like an internal staff program that we expanded out to the community, but this year our staff is really going to tax that capacity. And then in addition to that, we've always had a wait list. Like we have all these people who are like, I really want my kid in this kind of a care environment. And so, yeah, and it really just links so well with our Montessori philosophy. And so we really want to support that. And so we're like, can we just add like 1,600 square feet to that and then have twice as many kiddos? So that's another potential plan that we're working on. It actually probably will, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen in like the next 9 months. And so we're working on that. Yeah. It's kind of the way, I don't know if any of you were here where we did the original nursery, but it was like almost people left for the summer and then came back and it was there. Like it happened in 2 months. So we know that it can happen. We just need to find some funding for that, which we're looking for. And then all these things that they talked about a little bit in the teens presentation, this unique stuff that's happening with gardening, cafe, Creativity Inc. Even 9 to 12 are doing expressions down there that just have additional, like, it's not just buying books for kids. It's like making sure they have the right tools to do really neat things. And they come up with ideas all the time. We're like, whoa. Yeah. Yeah. And so.
Lathe pencils. There's pencils that they've lathed, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Pens, but then they use
Yeah.
the for the pens. They need this hand tool, but not that hand tool because of this, and this reason.
And so, we just want to really, those are things that I think community really wants to support, and I think families can get excited about contributing to. And so we want to try to come up with some ways to help with that. And certainly our reef tank has been one of the best examples of that. They really, because of the connections really that the teachers already had, mainly one teacher in that community, that just, they're like, yeah, we want to send you stuff. We can send you all the stuff that you want. And so they're just giving a lot of great information back about what kinds of learning is happening. And then that allows them to receive things that support those activities. And then when there's a really passionate adult that helps kind of guide that process, it just really turns into something successful. And so we're hoping we can do that with some of these areas that are really getting some good traction, especially in the islands. The building group just goes through stuff all the time. You know what I mean? They just need a lot of stuff. And so trying to help support them with that.
They're building a building right now.
That's right.
Yeah.
Let's say a year and a half ago, I had a person call me from the community and they said, I know this person who knows this person that has their child go to your school, and I have this huge greenhouse I'd love to donate to you. And Oxa was part of that team that helped us to put it together. And now we've got these beautiful vegetables coming out of it that they're selling just to our staff right now. And what Danielle's talking about is what we call the grill house, which is up by the nursery. They're making it into a stand where they're going to sell all their wares. And so they come up with an idea and we try to figure out ways that we can help them make it go to fruition.
Yeah, and when actually too, we had to move the garden beds when we put in from when we were putting in the casa, and they moved those beds inside the greenhouse because it's such a huge greenhouse. If you haven't seen it, you should go check it out. And they're growing stuff in there now because it's the winter, but they can still do it because of that greenhouse, which is really cool.
And watch teens do that kind of work, move giant raised beds. When they put their minds to it, it doesn't take them that long to make something like that happen when they kind of move in a unified group. So it's very cool.
Yeah. I think I have one more. I just always want people, that's a cool picture from our groundbreaking with our teen, well, that was a teen group or a 9 to 12 group one, and they all got to put their handprints in their names, and the kids really loved that. And then they were like, so our names are going to be under there all the time? And I was like, well, not exactly. They're down there. But it really just made them feel really excited and that they owned a little piece of that space. And then I always want to mention, we post all this stuff on our blog, all of this information is there for you, and we're trying to come up with some ways too to reshare information. We did kind of recategorize the way things are displayed, so you can at any time kind of go on and click on an age level and find all the posts that our teachers have, because they really put, this is all done really by our staff, and they really put a lot of creative energy into what do they think is going to be valuable for families to know, and trying to share things with you that will really impact hopefully your day-to-day life with your kids. I know that Early Ed did one not too long ago about just your daily routine what you can do with your kid, and that will make things just flow better for you and for them, and understanding where they are developmentally, and just more things about our program and why we do the things we do. It can be really helpful to check that out. And
Listen, I sat down with a man that does playground architecture, and his child goes to a private school over in Louisville, and he developed this whole master plan for their preschool playground. And he was sharing that with us. He said, but I had to change it a lot because the teachers didn't want the kids to get dirty and come back into school. And I'm like, we don't have that problem. You guys might not like that part, but we don't have that problem. They're out in the dirt and the mud, and we want them to be kids.
And I would even say, like, I would think that a lot of our parents, definitely as they learn, like my own parenting journey with it, like understanding, like at some point I was like, you know, like if she's not head to toe covered in mud, like what happened today? Like what, you know what I mean? Like,
why aren't you covered?
Yeah, like what happened? What was different about today? So, you know, just we're trying to do more of those things. And like with the March PIP workshop, our hope is that the staff will be able to share the type of outdoor environment that they have learned is beneficial to children, and what types of things are good and healthy to have in their physical environment. And that just makes me want to mention that, you know, they're working on some things with our fitness space as well. So even things you think of as more traditionally like fitness and, you know, activity and healthy bodies, you know, all those things. Our staff is just really conscientious, I think, of that whole child. And so the cost is just one piece of that whole child view. And then I think it's really going to be amazing when we have that first exhibition, which that should definitely be in there, at least a piece of it. You know, coming to see all those projects and having a nice space to do those presentations, and really be comfortable. So yeah, everything's, you know, well, it shouldn't exist. It's going good right now. So any questions for me about that? Okay.
Any questions in general? You can take us to the last slide there, Caitlin. What didn't we share that you want to know more about, or what do you want to grill us about? Yeah.
I have like maybe a suggestion, or if it's there, I don't know where to find it, but like when we log our volunteer hours, I know it says thank you for putting in your hours. I try to remember to do that every time I do studio care or whatever it is.
Sure.
But then, you know, I've got a lot on the plate.
What?
I can't. But sometimes I'm like, did I do it? Did I not do it? Is there a way to go back and see?
Well, at the PPCs, they should show you where your numbers are.
Okay.
So that we give that out to you, and so they'll say it shows you've got 4 hours, and if that doesn't look right, go in and put it more in.
Okay.
You know, we trust you.
I work for Humana, so there's a website on there that I can try, and it'll tell me how many. I'm like,
right.
Okay, so this is how
We might at some point, I hear you, we might have some sophistication. We've looked at apps before, there's just too much money right now. But,
I get it.
yeah, but
Get a team to do it.
that's right. Yeah.
You know, I just it's like just making sure that you guys know.
Yeah. And at the PPC, that's your double check. And anytime you can say to Parena, probably, you can email her and say, what are my volunteer hours? Brandy also does that, so, yeah. Thank you. Chip, you got something? Come on, ready for it.
Just wondering, does Ball State have other relationships with charter schools, or is this the only one in the state?
They do have other charter schools that they authorize. I don't know what that number is right now. I'd say it's 20-something. So, yes.
Is there other universities that do it?
Authorized. There are a few. Trine University being one of them. Purdue. No, actually Purdue doesn't. So there's about 80-something charter schools down in the state of Indiana. And so most of them are done through Ball State, the mayor's office of Indianapolis, or the Indiana Charter Board. Yeah.
The consistent problem of so many people being on a waiting list,
Yeah.
each year. I think that this has happened pretty consistently, where we have so many applicants and not enough space.
Right.
Is there any like 5-10-year goal to expand the size of the school where we can accept more learners?
I mean, so just the question was about expansion for the wait list, and no, there really isn't a plan to do that. You know, I think the position the school's taking is if somebody else wants to start a charter school, which, you know, it was happening probably at least once a year. Now it's about once every other year. It's become harder to start a charter school than it was when we started charter school. But you know, we give anyone anything that we have to start something. You know, so there's now 3 charter schools locally. But, you know, there have been people that have looked at starting other Montessori schools, Greater Clark schools that looked at starting a Montessori school. We're like, take anything we're doing and use it to have more. So I think that's kind of our goal right now instead of trying to do more. We've looked before at having a satellite school in another location. We've had people approach us about starting a satellite school in Louisville during their charter school program. But at this point, we think we can do well with what we're doing. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks so much for coming, and we'll be around if you have a few more questions, and thanks for spending the evening with us. Have a great night. Thank you.